If you're on SSI, here's something that might make your heart skip a beat this month. There is no SSI deposit landing in August of 2026. Nothing on the 1st. Nothing at all. Before you panic, I want you to know right away, this is not a cut, and it's not a mistake. There's a very simple calendar reason behind it, and I'll explain it fully in just a minute. But that's only the first of 3 real surprises hitting seniors this August. And one of them is genuinely great news, involving real money already going out to millions of people who were shortchanged for years under an old, unfair rule. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's happening with your payments this month and what to actually do about each one. Hi, I'm Walter Sinclair, and if you're new here, welcome. Before we get started, I want to be upfront with you, as I always am. I'm not a financial advisor, and I don't work for the Social Security Administration or Medicare. What I do is spend my week going through official Social Security updates, so you don't have to dig through government announcements yourself. And this week, there's genuinely a lot happening. Here's what we're covering. First, the SSI payment calendar quirk that's causing a lot of confusion this month, and why it's not the cut it might look like. Second, a real story about someone who got worried over exactly this issue and how it got resolved. Third, an update on the Social Security Fairness Act. Real retroactive payments still going out to millions of teachers, police officers, firefighters, and their spouses. And fourth, at the end, a practical update on how much you can earn this summer while collecting Social Security without it affecting your benefit at all. If this video is useful to you, consider subscribing, because when things like this change, and this month there's a lot changing at once, I put out a video breaking it down within days. Let's get into it. Let's start with the one causing the most confusion right now, the missing August SSI deposit. Here's exactly what's happening. Social Security has a standing policy that if the first day of the month falls on a weekend or a federal holiday, the payment simply moves to the last business day before it. August 1st, 2026 falls on a Saturday, so instead of waiting until the following Monday, the SSI payment moved backward to Friday, July 31st. What that means in practice is that if you receive SSI, you actually got 2 payments in July, one on July 1st for your regular July benefit, and a second one on July 31st, which covers what would normally have arrived on August 1st. Then, in August itself, there's simply nothing, because that payment already went out early. Your next SSI deposit after that lands right on schedule, September 1st. I want to be very clear about who this affects, because this is where a lot of the confusion comes from. This calendar shift applies specifically to SSI, Supplemental Security Income, and does not affect regular Social Security retirement, disability, or survivor benefits at all. If you receive those benefits instead of SSI, your August payment arrives exactly on the schedule you're used to, based on your birthday, on the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th Wednesday of the month. And if you receive both SSI and Social Security together, only the SSI portion of your payments shifts around this way. Your Social Security portion still follows its own separate schedule. If you want to check this for yourself rather than take my word for it, look back at your bank statement or benefit history for July, and you should see 2 separate SSI deposits, one near the start of the month and one right at the end, dated July 31st. That second deposit is your August payment, arriving 4 weeks early simply because of the calendar, not because of anything you did or didn't do. This isn't a one-time oddity either. It's simply how the calendar works for SSI throughout the year. Later in 2026, you'll see something similar happen in October, with 2 deposits close together, one on the 1st and one on the 30th. And again in December, with a payment on the 31st covering January of 2027. Once you understand the pattern, none of these should catch you off guard. They're just SSI working around weekends and holidays the same way every year. Let me tell you about a woman I'll call Evelyn, who lives outside Sacramento, California, and has relied on SSI for several years due to a long-term disability. When Evelyn checked her bank account at the start of August and saw no deposit had come in, her first thought was that something had gone terribly wrong. Maybe her eligibility had been cut off, or there had been some kind of processing error with her case. Evelyn spent an anxious weekend before she was able to reach her local Social Security office on Monday morning. The representative she spoke with quickly recognized what had happened and explained the same calendar rule we just walked through, that her August payment had simply arrived a day early, on July 31st, precisely because August 1st landed on a Saturday. Evelyn went back and checked her account history, and sure enough, there it was, a deposit on July 31st that she'd initially assumed was just her regular July payment arriving a little differently than usual. What made this stressful for Evelyn wasn't really about the money itself, since it had in fact arrived. It was the fear of the unknown. The sinking feeling that something in the system had gone wrong through no fault of her own. She told the representative she'd nearly called her daughter in a panic before deciding to try Social Security directly first. And afterward, she felt a little embarrassed about how worried she'd let herself get over something that turned out to be so simple. Once she understood the pattern, she told a neighbor afterward that she wished she'd known about it in advance, so she could have avoided that whole weekend of worry. That's exactly why I wanted to cover this clearly today, so you don't have to go through that same scare. Now, let's move to the third surprise, and this one is genuinely great news for a specific group of people. It involves the Social Security Fairness Act, a law signed in January of 2025 that repealed two old rules called the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. For decades, these two rules reduced or eliminated Social Security benefits for people who also received a pension from certain public sector jobs, mainly teachers, firefighters, and police officers, along with their spouses and surviving spouses, even in cases where those people had also paid into Social Security through other work over the years. To understand why this mattered so much, it helps to know what these two old rules actually did. The windfall elimination provision reduced a person's own Social Security retirement or disability benefit if they also received a pension from a job that hadn't paid into Social Security, even if they'd earned Social Security credits through other work over their career. The government pension offset did something similar to spousal and survivor benefits, often reducing them dramatically, sometimes down to nothing at all for the same reason. For decades, this meant a retired teacher or police officer, or their widow or widower, could end up with a far smaller Social Security payment than someone with an otherwise identical work history who simply hadn't worked in public service. Since that repeal, Social Security has been steadily working through a massive backlog of cases, and the results so far are substantial. As of this year, the agency has paid out roughly $17 billion in retroactive benefits to more than 3 million people affected by these old rules. For many recipients, that meant a lump sum retroactive payment averaging around $6,710, along with permanently higher monthly Social Security checks going forward, often somewhere between $300 and $1,000 more per month, depending on the individual's specific situation. Here's where it gets more complicated and worth watching closely if you think you might be affected. Some newer applicants have only been receiving 6 months of retroactive payments, rather than the full year the law was designed to provide. And this became enough of a concern that a group of senators sent a formal letter to Social Security earlier this year, pushing the agency to apply the full 1-year retroactive window to everyone equally, not just those who had already filed applications before the law passed. That conversation between Congress and Social Security is still ongoing as of this year. So if you believe you might qualify under the Fairness Act and haven't looked into it yet, this is exactly the kind of situation where checking sooner rather than later could make a real difference in what you're owed. I also want to clear up a common point of confusion here. This Fairness Act change only applies to people affected by those two specific old rules, mainly certain public sector retirees and their spouses or widows. If you spent your career in private sector work paying into Social Security the whole time, this particular change most likely doesn't apply to your situation. So don't assume there's a retroactive payment waiting for you if you've never had a pension from a job that didn't pay into Social Security. Now, some of you might be thinking, if I actually qualified for one of these Fairness Act payments, wouldn't I have already gotten it by now? And that's a completely fair question, especially given how much time has passed since the law was signed. Here's the honest answer. Social Security has been processing millions of cases, and while most people who were already receiving benefits before the law changed have been updated, newer applicants and certain spousal cases have moved more slowly, partly because of exactly the retroactivity dispute we just discussed. This isn't a sign that the payments aren't real. Quite the opposite. $17 billion has genuinely gone out the door already. It simply means the process isn't finished for everyone. And if your specific situation involves a spouse's benefit or a case that started after the law passed, it's worth checking your status directly rather than assuming you've already gotten everything you're owed. Before we wrap up with one more practical update, I've put together a free, simple checklist to help you check your own payment status this month, covering the SSI calendar shift we discussed, and a few questions worth asking if you think you might qualify for a Fairness Act retroactive payment. It's free, there's no catch, and the link is right there if you'd like a copy. Here's the last update, and it's a genuinely practical one if you're still working while collecting Social Security, which a lot of retirees do, especially with seasonal or summer work. If you haven't reached your full retirement age yet, there's a limit on how much you can earn from a job before Social Security starts withholding part of your benefit. And for 2026, that limit has gone up. If you'll be under full retirement age for the entire year, you can now earn up to $24,480, which works out to about $2,040 a month before any of your benefit gets withheld. Earn more than that, and Social Security withholds $1 in benefits for every $2 you earn above the limit. Here's what that actually looks like for someone. Say you're 63, collecting Social Security, and you take on a seasonal summer job earning $30,000 for the year, $5,520 over the limit. Because of the $1 withheld for every $2 over the threshold, that would mean $2,760 withheld from your Social Security benefits over the course of the year, spread out rather than taken all at once. Knowing that number ahead of time, before you commit to extra summer hours, can help you decide whether picking up that additional work still makes sense for your overall financial picture this year. If you're reaching full retirement age sometime during 2026, there's a separate, more generous limit that applies just to the months before your birthday. $65,160 for the year, with a gentler penalty of $1 withheld for every $3 earned above that amount. And once you actually reach full retirement age, this entire earnings limit disappears completely. You can earn any amount from work with no reduction to your Social Security at all. Here's something important to know if any of your benefits do get withheld under this rule. It isn't money that's simply lost forever. Social Security recalculates your benefit once you reach full retirement age, giving you credit for any month's benefits were reduced or withheld. So the system does correct for it eventually. It's just something to plan around in the meantime rather than be surprised by later, especially if you're picking up extra hours this summer. Let's bring this together. Number 1. If you're on SSI, don't panic about the missing August deposit. It simply moved to July 31st because August 1st fell on a Saturday, and you actually received 2 payments in July as a result. Number 2. This shift only affects SSI. Regular Social Security retirement, disability, and survivor benefits continue on their normal birthday-based schedule in August. Number 3. The Social Security Fairness Act has already paid out $17 billion in retroactive benefits to public sector retirees and their spouses affected by the old WEP and GPO rules, and that process is still ongoing. Number 4. If you think you might qualify under the Fairness Act, especially as a spouse or a newer applicant, check your status directly rather than assuming you've already received everything you're owed. And number 5. If you're working while collecting Social Security before full retirement age, you can now earn up to $24,480 a year, or $65,160 in the year you reach full retirement age, before any benefit gets withheld. If you know someone on SSI who might be confused about their August payment, or a retired teacher, police officer, or firefighter who's never looked into the Fairness Act, please share this video with them. Because in both cases, understanding what's actually happening can save real worry. And in the case of the Fairness Act, potentially real money too. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Did the missing August SSI payment catch you off guard, or had you already heard about the calendar shift? Next week, we're going to take a closer look at how Medicare premiums are shaping up for 2027 and what that could mean for the raise you're expecting from Social Security, so keep an eye out for that one. Until then, this is Walter Sinclair reminding you, check the calendar before you panic, check your eligibility before you assume, and I'll see you in the next one.